Yeah. As a fan of that individual, you imagine how I felt 3 seconds. Yeah. We're not actually, like, you guys aren't up yet. Sorry. No, sorry. We weren't. I tried, I didn't want you guys to, yeah, never mind. Anyway, hold on. Max Hiller is already standing by and waiting.
His McLaren hoodie today, he let me know.
Sorry.
Woot woot.
No.
My brave child has been on 3 walks this week.
Nice.
Yeah, in his buggy. He's learning to walk today. He's figuring it out.
All right, folks, are you ready?
Ready.
Lights out and away we go.
And I regret not
Welcome
ordering
to
more
Gravel Trap F1 Live. I'm Buck. That's Caroline. That's Christina. And then there, behind the microphone, is Mr. Squeaks McGee. Take it away.
Yes. Fun fact, we thought we were live like 3 or 4 minutes ago, and we were just deep diving into Lewis's deep dive in the first corner of
That's
the
Caroline. That's
race,
Christina.
and then realized we
there,
weren't live. So
behind
let's
the microphone,
re-deep
is Mr.
dive.
Squeaks McGee.
Into the it's one of those situations where you're just like, that Mercedes had to have had talked about what are you going to do at turn 1 to both of their drivers, but I feel like they need to go back in and clarify their plans because that did not go the way they wanted it to. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, no.
Well,
That
here's
was not the move.
Here's my caveat. Is it suck for Lewis? Yes. It's terrible for Lewis. Nobody wants, to basically DNF themselves a little bit in a race. But his tire options were extremely limited. So
absolutely.
I kind of had the thought, like, for him, like, if he's going to go down in a race, this is not a bad race for him to go down in, because with the tire change regulation that they made for the weekend, like for the day, not even for the weekend, for the day, he already was super limited in his options. And what was my other point? I had another reason. Oh, there is like a little bit of a justice in it that with it being his fault, he only ruined his own race. Like, it would be another thing if he also DNF'd George, because I always take it back to the US Grand Prix last year when George T-boned Carlos in turn 1, and it ruined Carlos's race, and George kept going. And I was like, that is not justice. But the justice in it is that Lewis was wrong and Lewis paid the price.
Yeah. It was very ambitious to like try to go 3 abreast into turn 1 on a track that currently has a lot of dust and dirt on it. It hadn't been cleared off yet. Very ambitious to try and make that move. Definitely worth. Yeah, you just have to wonder what conversation Mercedes had ahead of time, because Lewis was on the soft tire, George was on the medium. So Lewis was going to get the better run off the line. He was also in 3rd, and P3 was going to get a better run off the line than P2 was. So you really do have to just wonder, what was their plan? Because
I don't think that they expected Max to be so far alongside George. I think that Lewis might have seen Max ahead of George and thought George would have the space to move over, but then George broke so much later than Max did that they all 3 ended up alongside, and I think that's kind of what
Yeah.
And George couldn't see it. Lewis was in too late. It was just
Big perfect
cringe.
storm.
I personally, I do think George, he got eager and came out from behind Max and pushed Lewis over and created the 3 abreast. If George had stayed behind Max and not, because if you watch the replay, he does shove like Lewis over. Lewis prevents early contact with his teammate by moving a little to the left. I don't think Lewis realized George had gotten that far, was still that far alongside.
Yeah.
I thought it seems like he thought George would have dropped back in that last second, which I think he might have
Especially on
tried to.
mediums.
Right. I think he just assumed he was further ahead of George than he was. To me, George got really eager and created a 3 abreast that didn't need to be there, but ultimately, with 2 car widths to his left, Lewis had plenty of room to kind of go wide and play it safe. So I'm the self-described Lewis fan. I wholeheartly say that it is his fault. But with that caveat that George kind of...
Yeah. He's like, but he didn't start it, but he ended it.
Yeah.
But I will say, like I said, because then Rachel from Sky Sports interviewed Lewis like in the middle of the race because obviously he DNF'd. And I was like, I'm continuously impressed. Fun fact about me, when I first started watching F1, I didn't like Lewis because, and when I say I first started watching, like it was always on in our house, but I like really started paying it to like the first race I really sat and like paid attention to was Silverstone 2021. And I was not a fan of Lewis after that because I felt like he yeeted Max into the wall and like didn't even care. And I was like, he thinks he's so cool because he's won all these championships and he's so arrogant and it was not his corner. And I was just like, dumb. Let's just be real. I was dumb. And then I don't even remember what the event was, but something happened later that was his fault. And he like came out publicly, apologized, and like defended the people at the factory and was so classy. And I was like, I think I misjudged him. I actually think he is like a good person that wants good things for people. And I was just judging him off of one little thing. And I said it again when they interviewed him in the middle of this race this weekend. And the first question that Rachel asked him was, have you seen the footage? To which he said, no, I haven't been able to see it yet, which makes sense because he probably got back to the paddock and they were like, and media, like there was like no break. And he said, he's like, I'm willing to take responsibility. You know, it's really disappointing, of course, to like not get to finish the race when you had a really good starting position, blah, 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 blah. And I like said something on my Instagram story about like what a class act that like even in the face of disappointment, he like is behaving well and like carrying himself well and taking responsibility, whatever. And somebody, I'm not going to name names, but somebody messaged me and was like, I think he's a little on his high horse. He never actually takes responsibility. He never actually apologizes. He just says he's willing to, but then never actually does it. And then after the race, when they like posted the video of him A, publicly apologizing, and B, going to George and apologizing and taking full responsibility, I said to my husband, I was like, should I send them this post?
Those definitives, those they nevers, like that is the kind of fandom that leads to the toxic vitriol and mudslinging that
only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Exactly.
Blake. I get that reference.
But that's why we like my Chris and I started the Gravel Trap as like a sim racing club initially, was we wanted to not have that kind of attitude. And it was because you're right, the absolutes are Sithy.
Yeah. And I say that I'm not trying to like throw shade at this person. I say that as a person who dealt in absolutes at the very beginning with Lewis Hamilton and decided not to like him off of one thing and then let myself be proven wrong and am eating all the crow and am, you know, sticking my foot in my mouth, whatever you want to say it is. But I'll admit that I was wrong and misguided and that he's a class act, especially in the face of what we saw from Lance. only a day prior, which
Oh
let's
my
unpack that.
gosh.
What
That
was
was,
that about?
oh my goodness. Like, is it all fine and well to be upset when things don't go your way and when you're frustrated? Yes. But there are very clear good ways to handle that frustration and bad ways. If he wants to be short and give very limited answers to the press, that is that is a perfectly okay way to show that you're frustrated. But don't chuck the $100,000 steering wheel. No.
I missed
And
that.
Oh,
oh
He
yeah,
yeah.
threw his steering wheel?
you can see it on his onboard. And yeah, he was getting out of the car, he took it off, and instead of handing it to the team member that was reaching for it, he like slides it. He doesn't fully like huck it, but he does start sliding it just down the top nose, and it goes down over top, like over the edge of it. Yes. So he kind of just flung it instead of handing it to a person that was right there waiting for it. He didn't go to get weighed. He started just walking towards the back of the garage. And yeah, then he just gave a shove to his PT, which, whatever their relationship is, it does sound like they discussed it and like water under the bridge for them. But still, this is a public forum. This is your workplace. That's not okay. And the fact that
Yeah.
there wasn't a public full statement and apology about that behavior, in my mind, that's kind of the more gaping thing, is the lack of accountability for those moments, for that action.
Not cool.
But we've seen this over the whole weekend. I mean, it started with rumors that his dad's looking to sell the team. And then and I haven't seen any official reports of those rumors. Those are just social media rumors.
Oh no,
Is
most
it
of those
just
rumors
Twitter?
are cocky pop. Yes.
Yeah.
Most of them are complete and
I
utter
feel like
cocky
a lot
pop.
of this stuff gets said on Twitter that I just do not see because I'm not on Twitter. I'm like, if I don't see it on Instagram, I don't see it. You know?
But he just seemed to have a crappy attitude all weekend.
He was not having a good time. Like, he overall has just been quite dejected and I think down on himself, which is fair. He hasn't been having a good time. He has been having an abysmal season at best. That is being generous, I think. So, but at the end of the day, it is part of his job to manage those emotions and to choose how he deals with these situations. So showing your frustration is fine, but he crossed a couple of lines there. Having a bad crabby weekend, Lando was having the exact same thing, but he handled it with humor, a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, but nothing extremely dramatic.
Yeah.
He kind of just watered down the back. Sometimes you have bad weekends and you have to be able to put them behind you and just walk forward, which Lance was definitely struggling with. He needs to change something, regardless of what's going on track. He needs to deal with some of the off-track crap, quite frankly.
Well, and you also wonder, like, well, two questions. First of all, did the conditions play a role in a lack of, I guess, self-awareness? Because,
Probably.
like, when you're hot and you're gross and you don't feel good, the last thing you want is somebody to, like, crack a joke with you or try to make light of a situation that you feel like is serious. Never a excuse to physically assault somebody. However, like, I don't think that this is the regular Lance that we know and love and see.
No.
And which kind of brings me to my second question, which is like, do you think that this happens behind closed doors? I'm like, I don't think so. Because somebody asked me, like, well, they just caught it on camera this time. Maybe this happens like behind closed doors. And I'm like, there are cameras everywhere on them all the time. I'm pretty sure if this was like a regular behavior for him, I think we would have seen it already.
That's very true. It's one of those, generally speaking, it is very hard for them to have privacy. And so we know way too much about them than I think they would ever want. And this is one of the consequences of it, though, is that you don't have those moments of privacy where, you know, an average person can absolutely lose their cool and make poor decisions, and it won't have massive ramifications. But again, that is part of their job, is managing that public image that they present, especially when you're at a race weekend, especially when you're in your garage, when you have how many cameras on board of your car that people can just tune into.
That's true.
Like, he could have waited like those couple of steps until he was fully behind the door to show that he was extremely frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
He could have waited just that little bit. It's just overall a very unfortunate situation. But speaking of heat exhaustion, I not
Let's
funny,
talk
but kind of
about
funny.
it.
So because this is what I do, I was like, I'm gonna refresh my memory on what heat exhaustion and all those heat illnesses actually have an impact on. I'm gonna go to the internet.
Good
Very
old Google.
Hermione. Quickly play the Hermione Granger clip of like, I went to the library. Very much
for
the
some
mood
light
here, right?
reading.
Exactly. So here are some of the symptoms of heat exhaustion, and heat exhaustion covers everything
Wait,
from.
is this for the podcast?
No.
Okay.
This is a funny that's coming on later. I'm not talking about this in the podcast. But you have heat cramps being the mildest, heat stroke being the most serious, but this is just like heat illness in general. So you have stuff that you would expect, like heavy sweating, fatigue, nausea, headache. Then you also have more serious stuff, like we saw them mentioning, like faintness, weak pulse, low blood pressure upon standing, and muscle cramps.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just kind of there being like, why? And here's from the Mayo Clinic when to see a doctor. If you think you've reached heat exhaustion, stop all activity and rest.
Yeah. Step one.
And one of the ways that they're like, hey, here's how you should check your internal temperature is use a thermometer, but they don't say the mouth thermometer. They say the
butt one.
Boop. Yeah. And so
that
it just popped into my head of like things that the FIA could mandate. And I was like, nope. Nope. Never mind.
Too far. I'm pretty sure Fernando, if they had asked Fernando during the race, like if he was willing to, he'd be like, I'm literally telling you my seat is on fire. That's all you need to know.
Like, just, okay.
Yeah. But like question that I would like to just settle for all of our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think that these conditions this weekend were safe and or acceptable conditions to put a human being through?
No.
Even a high performance athlete?
No. So from this website as well, actually useful piece of information is they recommend that if your internal temperature meets 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius for the reasonable people out there who follow a metric that makes sense, or higher, they need immediate cooling and urgent medical attention. So at the end of the day, I'm willing to bet that a majority of the drivers had that temperature and not just like a blip, like an outlier peak little spike in temperature. I'm willing to bet that it was for an extended period of time. And exposure when it comes to heat is kind of the bigger thing that you're more worried about. You can stand in front of your boiling hot oven, yank something out, and be perfectly fine. Should you be standing in the middle of your oven? No, obviously not. Like, that is the difference. And the fact that so many drivers were also just being like, yeah, I felt like I was fainting. Yeah, kind of blacked out on those high-speed turns.
You're threw up on lap 15.
Or 16.
Yeah.
No.
Not okay.
No. And please notice how, and I think that the throwing up incident is actually really indicative of why it should not be up to the drivers if they retire or not in a lot of these situations. Esteban threw up in the like first first big little stint of the race, and did not mention, by the way, I threw up until he got out of the car, because he knew if he mentioned that, the pressure would be on them to be like, no, come back. Yeah. If they were a good, responsible team, which as an Alpine lover, I'm going to be like, sure, yeah, they totally would have made him come in. But
we'll never know.
He might have just chugged water and just vomited up water.
Well, it makes you wonder if
still not good.
Is it a regular occurrence that they just like don't talk about? I don't know. You know?
But that's the thing. They were all talking about it. We have video evidence of how many of them not being able to lift themselves out of the car. Logan, before his teammate, gave him a little bit of a privacy screen, you could see the sweat dripping off of his race suit. Like, and yes, he already had flu-like symptoms, which is probably why he retired, because they probably discussed it prior to the race of, if you feel unwell, this is what we're doing, and it is okay. But none of the other drivers, I'm willing to bet, had that conversation beforehand, which is why it probably wasn't on their minds of, right, it's an option that I can just retire. They just autopiloted through the whole dang thing.
Yeah. Well, they put their visors up and they tried to like get reprieve in their hands and listen, it makes me so sad when I see the comments from people that are like, these are high performance athletes. This is like what they signed up for. This is blah blah. I'm like, this is inhumane. This is
Yeah.
what this is. It's inhumane. Because here's the thing. Are they high performance athletes? Yes, they are. But you also have to remember, like an astronaut that like trains to go to space and trains to handle the G forces and trains to handle the things. These guys are training all the time to prepare for the conditions of the car, but also the specific conditions of where they're going. That's why it's like so crazy when they go to Singapore to see all the crazy things they're doing to get ready for Singapore. They are preparing, they are getting ready, but there is a level to where you cannot prepare. It is simply inhumane to expect even the most prepared athlete to expose themselves to that. I mean, I said it after the sprint race. When I saw them do the little interviews after the sprint race, I looked at my husband and I was like, their race suits are drenched. They are like soaking wet. And that was a
They were
sprint race
full
with like,
different colors.
yeah, with like 3 safety cars. Now you put them in a 57 lap race where they can push every single lap because they know they have to come in after 18 laps on the tires. So there is no tire management. There's no like
Pacing
whatever.
yourself, none
no,
of it. Yeah.
you are hard pushing every single lap.
So I'm going to cut in here.
Yes, cut in.
We're getting a lot of marks.
Oh,
from
hit us with it.
the audience.
Do they hate us?
No. They love your hat, by the way.
Oh, guys, you can get
and
it
your
at
headband.
CMC Motorsports. My headband. I'm not wearing. Oh, Christina's headband.
So,
Squeezing my head.
we got some people from Greece. Nicole Fry has joined us, and
Hey, Nicole!
she's commenting how it, I guess, mirrors the experience you guys had in Miami.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I don't want to claim that we went through what they went through in Qatar and Miami, but I feel like we felt
You cook.
a measure.
So there's mixed. It seems there's mixed feelings over the inhumane or not inhumane opinion.
Okay.
I happen to be in the opposing camp.
Ooh, no.
I'm former.
We still love you.
I'm former military, and I'm knowing the limits of the human body. I think make the decision themselves. I mean, look at Sargent. He made a decision. He recognized the current state of his physical readiness and made a decision to come in. He didn't want to, tried to fight it, but eventually he called it and made the responsible choice. That's just me. I do think.
Nah.
I think that the inhumane argument isn't doesn't rank as high as the if one of them passes out, they could crash into someone else and hurt somebody else. That's the that's the danger issue that I think. Well, all right, you can't if you can't confidently say they're all going to stay conscious the entire time, and you think at least one of them is going to pass out, you could cause a massive pile up on a restart or something, or anywhere. So yeah, the risk would then be to the point they should probably changes. Our friend from Greece, Mishiago,
Hey.
screwing that up. Says that even Alonso said, "I'm not doing that again, only in December."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to your point about like them passing out, multiple of the drivers said that they would black in and out, especially on the main straight, and that they would kind of like go in and out and just like fight to stay conscious.
It's
because it's one thing to be running, run it and sprinting or whatever in these conditions and like working out in these conditions and like being outside and blah blah. And Christina's going to get into this in the episode, so listen to the episode that we're going to film in a little bit. But you're not just like exposed to the elements in these cars. I mean, it is heightened so much more than just what people are experiencing in the air around them when they're walking or running or whatever. I mean, you're surrounded by heavy machinery. You're wearing like 3 layers of long sleeve clothes and boots and a balaclava and a helmet. So there's like and gloves. I mean, imagine being there in your winter clothes and running and doing and working out and being forced to drink hot water. And by the way, you only like a half a liter of it, so you don't really get that much of it for 2 hours.
And it gets boiling hot as well. At a certain point, it's like you might as well not drink that because it's gonna burn your tongue. Quite frankly,
the family.
And you're breathing in your own vomit that you've thrown up into your balaclava. Like, no, thank you.
Oh, poor Esteban.
I know.
One of our newest followers, the Famula One podcast, met them on Instagram the other day. They're asking, don't they have biometric tracking in their gloves?
For their pulse. I don't think it does their temperature, which is a big difference. And also, it's on their fingers.
Their temperature, but yeah, it wasn't accurate enough for the temperatures for them to like keep them in the gloves long term.
They don't just keep a thermometer in there.
That'd be so uncomfortable.
That would be the straw. That would be the last invasive straw.
The end. No.
No.
So before we get too far into this, I know, Caroline, you have opinions about Qatar, big picture.
Big picture.
Big.
And I'm sure both of you do. Can you share for our audience an acceptable summary of your opinion of Qatar, and then also both of you, your opinion of this 18-lap restriction on the stints and stuff.
And we're not going to go too far into the 18-lap one because I'm going to talk about it in the
you're doing. Oh, okay. Well, then, all right.
But it's okay. Yes, I texted the team before we started this, and I was like, I want you all to know that I have strong opinions. And for those that know me from my page, I really try not to like put my opinions on you guys because they're my opinions, and that doesn't make them truth. And I can recognize that. But I will say, just for me, in my mind, in my world, I have never liked the Qatar Grand Prix. When we went there in 2021, I didn't like it. Obviously didn't like it this year. It's kind of like that Chris Evans, I think it's a Jimmy Fallon episode where he's like, I just don't like it. I don't like it. I feel like the track conditions were horrible in 2021. The facilities were terrible. And I'm like, what? Like, this is such an expensive sport. And you're going to make them go somewhere and put themselves through this where the conditions are terrible and the track was terrible. And then they came back and they resurfaced and all this stuff. And guess what? It was still terrible. And what
about the racing?
I never liked it. I didn't like it. I mean, I don't like it. I feel like you weren't seeing their best. And that was probably where some of the frustration was coming from for some of the drivers as well. That
because it's a good layout. I like the track layout.
Really?
I like the high-speed corners. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
like
have
that.
yeah.
I do like
I don't
that.
have anything personal against the layout. I have something personal against the curbs. I have something personal against the surfacing. I have something personal against the geographic location and the facilities and the decisions that were made around it, and that my friends at Pirelli were the scapegoats when it wasn't their fault. They've been driving on these tires all year. It was not their fault. I will defend Pirelli. Anyway.
I do find the track to be so nondescript. Like so many of the high-speed corners can look similar from different camera angles.
Oh yeah, you can't tell where you are.
Right. When you watch a race at Spa or Monza or something, you can pretty quickly, from a glance, go, "Oh, this is where they are on track. This is where I'm looking." Qatar, not at all. Like turn 6 was the only one, and the whatever turn 15 when they kept going off track. Those are the two corners I knew about. Just
And for the sprint race qualifying, there was like nobody there.
Yeah.
There was like nobody there. I'm like, why are we going somewhere where nobody goes to the race? Why are we doing this? And putting them through this for that?
according to Michiago, if you have a phonetic spelling you can put in the chat, let me know. I'm butchering that. says Arab countries may pay big money, but any track in the Saudi Peninsula any good? He's asking, is any track in the Saudi Peninsula good overall? Like, for instance, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi.
I don't
Saudi
have as much of an
Arabia.
issue with Abu Dhabi because they go so late in the year, and it's at night. So,
But Caroline's looking at it big picture, guys. Like, she's not looking at it like I look at it very much from a track perspective. Like, is this a good track to race on? Because I do sim racing, and which ones do I like to race on? So I'd like to watch racing. She's looking at it as the whole experience.
experience for the fans, experience for the teams, experience for the drivers, experience for the personnel. And I mean, I read an interview from Lewis that was saying that he was so scared to go the first time they went because he was wearing the rainbow helmet and was scared he was going to get like murdered. And I was like, why are we going somewhere where the driver's scared he's going to get murdered? Maybe let's not.
Yeah. It's
According to Dwayne Black, the Reddit community, Formula Dank, coined the phrase, "We race for money," when the whole "we race as one" advertising started.
Well, yeah. They are a business first and foremost, and a lot of the times that takes precedence over human decency and general ethics, which
Christina, what's your opinion of
Yeah,
Qatar?
I'll be quiet now.
I hate sand. Straight up.
Yes,
That's
girl.
That's my biggest thing is I hate sand. I don't like going to the beach. You will never catch me there if
She
I
doesn't
can
like
help
it.
it. I don't like it.
I don't like it.
Don't like it. Like, I don't like swimming. I don't like sand. No. And the fact that so much of the track and the tires, even if we had a perfect surface, even if we had good curbs, you would still be getting how much flippin' sand brought onto the stupid track. And there are no support series here. So there's no help clearing that off the track. So you have to deal with the sand. The fact that there's no mandate, the fact that it gets a grade, is it a grade 1? I keep forgetting if it's grade 1 or grade A, but grade A beef
I
track.
think grade A is a meat thing.
I'm a vegetarian, guys. I don't know about grading meat or
I was
tracks,
with you until we got to
apparently.
grade A.
But look, if you're going to give it a good enough rating to have Formula One racing on it, why is there so much sand right there? There's a reasonable amount of debris
Because it
that can be
didn't
brought
really
onto the track.
pass
I
the
think
test.
that much sand is not. I don't think that much sand is reasonable. Overall. Also, you could have seen a mile away coming that like the temperatures at this time of year would be dumb. I had so many people from the area basically commenting on a couple of my videos from this weekend, just being like, yeah, this time of year is horrible. It is boiling hot. And I'm like, if we knew that, if this was a heat wave year, it would be a very different conversation because then we could chalk it up to it being an abnormally high temperature. But the fact that people are commenting and just saying, nope, this is completely normal.
And if they're going to move the World Cup
such a bad
for
idea.
temperatures, why wouldn't they do that
Yeah.
for this?
Especially when you're going to be the athletes are going to be experiencing a higher body temperature inside of a car than they are just like running around, falling down, and holding their ankles dramatically.
And wearing
like,
shorts and a t-shirt. And these guys are wearing like 4 layers of clothes.
They could put it under a dome. Somebody just suggested. They got enough money.
Yeah, make it indoor. Make it like.
Don't they have an indoor ski park there? Like you can go legit skiing
Listen,
yeah,
I don't know.
in the desert.
What do I know?
they've got a bunch of redonkulous looks things there. Hi, I can't keep track of them all.
It's crazy.
What
But
about
I
Piastri?
agree with you on the sand thing.
Yeah.
What about Piastri?
the sprint race? Piastri's first win. How do we feel about is it a win? Like,
Okay, everybody kept calling it a win, and I was like, does it count as a win? I don't know.
Formula One needs to decide if the sprints count or if they don't. Because we're all just wondering, being like, you're trying to make sprints happen, but you're not giving them any credit when they do happen. So why should we care about sprints if you're not counting them?
Does F2?
What? F2 does, yeah.
Okay. So
It's just
I think
just
it
a
should
different.
count, but that's just because I like Oscar Piastri and I want him to have a win.
maybe they'll start counting because this is a trial thing, right? They're only doing a couple a year to see if it works. Maybe if it ever gets permanently made, then those grandfathered stats of winners get tacked on to wins.
Who knows?
Because if they do, that would make Piastri the first rookie winner since 2007. Yeah.
It's Lewis.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that if it's a win, it should be classified as like a different kind of win, like a win with an asterisk, because it's like not quite the same.
It's definitely not. No.
He won the first stint.
Same.
They
But
had an
here's the
18 lap
thing.
limit.
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think that they should have done a sprint race in Qatar. I don't think that was a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't like if you're gonna go, why make it harder for yourself when you go? It sounds like
yeah.
like a toilet paper commercial. When you go, why make it harder for yourself when you go? But
Oh my
actually,
You don't want sand when you go, so.
no. Okay, guys, seriously though, when Yuki was like opening his sweet baby Yuki opening his visor, sand
got
in his
sand,
eyeballs.
yeah.
I'm like, this is why.
But I'm just thinking about people with contact lenses. Like, if I was sweating that much, I'd be hard blinking, just being like, I'm so blind right now.
Awful.
Like,
And then they're like, also stay in track limits. I'm like, I hate you.
you mean the track limits that they changed mid-weekend?
Did you guys see the interview with Sainz and the guys from P1?
No.
Was it post?
I don't
race?
watch
No.
the show.
This is.
Oh.
But he was talking about sprints, and I wanted to get.
Oh
your
no,
take
the
on this.
reverse sprint garbage? No, that's
The reverse-
stupid too.
The reverse.
No, that's
championship order.
stupid. That is stupid.
Yeah.
That's absolutely stupid. We've already seen what happens in a race when Max is starting from midfield for whatever cockamamie reason. And it's just waiting lap by lap for him to get up to the front. It would not actually make the race more interesting.
A sprint.
What makes the race
No, the short.
race sprint, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It wouldn't actually, it would still be processional because most of the cars don't actually put a fight up currently against Max. So you're not getting that. And then you just have, it's not a good idea when you have cars that have such a performance gap between them. And
Yeah.
besides, we are getting good wheel-to-wheel action. It's just the like P1 that is being pulled away by Max. All the rest of the racing on track is good. People are overthinking this. No,
Which, like-
dumb idea.
Like, good for Max. But I think that like it could maybe work if there wasn't such a performance gap. But I don't think anybody like saw the performance gap coming. I don't think anybody was like, well, yes, there will be a performance gap. I think it was just like, this is just what's happened. Everybody will catch up eventually. When they do, maybe that would be a good idea.
I think
It
Dwayne.
works for F2, but it doesn't work for F1. It'll never work for F1 is my thought. Like straight up.
All right, Dwayne,
Dwayne Black.
what you got?
I think he agreed. Based on his comment here, I think he agrees with you on they shouldn't have had a sprint there. For another reason being, you only get one practice session on a track they've only raced on once before, and I don't know how many drivers on this
Preach
grid
it,
were
Dwayne.
there
Preach it.
in that previous.
7 of them had not raced here
Okay.
prior.
Mhm.
So that's a third of the grid pretty much.
And guys, I just want to reiterate, these are my opinions. That doesn't make them truth. So I hold them for myself. And
That's not
if
the
you
case
disagree with
Christina.
me, I'm a big girl and I can handle it. And if you're gonna be mad at me about it, I'm a big girl and I can handle it.
There's nothing but love in this comment section.
But I'm not claiming to be right. I'm just claiming this is what I think.
I'm
Christina's
right.
like,
You're
"I'm right."
wrong. Sit down.
She's like, it will never work.
Jimbo22 asks, what are your thoughts on the turnaround from McLaren? They're consistent. Imagine if they started the season like this.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I love to see like McLaren rising from the ashes. Who doesn't love that kind of story where you're just like barely getting your car through a race at the first race and then now at the end you're double podiuming twice in a row. That's really awesome and really exciting. And like I not so quietly love Oscar Piastri. So like it's really exciting right now for me because I'm like, yeah, my boy. But also, I think Lando's a really great driver too. I am selfishly, politically, really excited that Lando's doing really well in the McLaren because I don't want to see him get poached by Red Bull.
He
want
won't
him
go to Red
like,
Bull.
I hope he doesn't. But
No, I
who
didn't.
knows?
That'd be a dumb idea. That'd be a bad decision for him.
I
And he
agree.
knows it. He knows that going to that second Red Bull seat is basically accepting that you're never going to fight for a championship, that you're always going to be put second. And he's not in a position that he needs to make that decision yet.
Mhm.
Like, that is such a long ways away. That is people who are solid, good midfield drivers. Those are the people that can consider that second Red Bull seat. The people who are okay with and who, for their careers, it makes sense for them to be like the little sidecar to Max's vroom vroom. Like, but Lando is not at that point. Lando will be one of the people competing for a championship.
I
Like,
hope so.
it's not.
Well,
Yeah,
next
no,
to
a much.
Piastri, and
I
that's
know.
Yeah, him,
Oscar's so
Piastri,
good
and
too.
Max. That's going to be the fight at this point.
Woo!
Because
This is gonna be
Mercedes and
so fun.
Ferrari, they don't know how to fix what's broken. So
Boop. I don't know. We'll see.
gotta
George
wait for a
wants
bit
it.
on them.
George wants it, but okay.
He does
actually,
want it, but
Yeah. Question. Hot take. Because I said this before they like put up the driver of the day graphic. I know this doesn't matter at all, but like before they put up the driver of the day graphic, I was like, George Loki deserves driver of the day. He
Yes.
was overtaking like crazy. I was shocked that he like wasn't even one of the options for driver. Was he not? He
yeah.
didn't win.
No, he
I know
was.
Didn't win.
all drivers
was-
are an option. It's a vote.
No,
was
but I mean like
Oscar,
they show the
George,
top three.
Lando
Okay.
was what I saw
Was
at
it
one
George?
point.
I thought it was Max. I don't know why I thought it was Max.
I didn't see
But it
Max.
was
I saw Oscar, George, Lando.
Okay, well, what do I know?
Yeah.
But I was like, George kind of deserves it. But I was obviously thrilled that Oscar won it. But like,
Yeah.
I was like, George Loki deserves it.
George 100% did, yeah.
Yeah. But no, to answer your question, I'm really excited that McLaren's doing really well. I hope that they also do really, really well next year. I'd love to see them like starting at the front next year at the beginning of the season, because now it's like, yay, rah rah, this is so exciting, gives us so much hope. But like the championships are already decided. So like
They can fight for more wins.
Yeah, thank you for coming in at the end. But maybe you can come in at the beginning next time. That'd be great.
Whoop whoop.
Dwayne Black says he read a book called Inside the Mind of the F1 Driver, and it says it's harder to be a number 2 driver than a number 1. You have to be able to deal with the comparisons and know you'll never be number 1. Now, based on that,
sounds like
what
being
do
a
we
second
think-
child.
What do we think about Ferrari? Because while Leclerc has been the de facto number 1 for a while now, Sainz has been doing so well that, like, I'm a bigger Sainz. Like, I wasn't even a Ferrari fan aside from you have to be, and now watching Sainz, it's a requirement. But Sainz is now doing so well. I'm like, I was gutted when I woke up yesterday and saw that he wasn't in the race. I texted you right away.
know.
So,
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
what do we think about like what's going on at Ferrari? Are the tides turning?
Fred came in at the very beginning of his time with Ferrari and said that there was not going to be a driver 1, driver 2 in his time at Ferrari. So I feel like pre-Fred, we saw Charles very driver 1 and Carlos very driver 2. But I actually feel like during Fred's time there, we haven't seen it as much. And I've enjoyed seeing Carlos perform really well just because I've always really liked Carlos. I've always thought he was a really good driver that was just undervalued. I feel like everywhere except for when he was at McLaren, I feel like they really like wanted him to do well at McLaren, did good things for him at McLaren, paved the way for him at Ferrari. And it was frustrating for me when he was at Ferrari and they kept like prioritizing Charles, who's also a great driver. But I'm like, but also you have an incredible driver in Carlos. You're holding him back. So it was disappointing for me yesterday because I was like, oh, but he's gonna he would fight. He'd get in there and he'd fight, but he can't because but then I had the thought about like 3/4 of the way through the race. I was like, if I was Carlos, I'd be like, kind of glad I'm not driving out there right now.
Hamilton must not have been that angry.
Oh yeah.
Dodged a
Very
bullet.
true.
Be like, ice bath, calling my name, gotta go.
Yeah. My big thing with driver 1 and driver 2 is that it only makes sense to do that in very specific situations. It makes sense for Red Bull to have a number 1 driver because they're at the front and because it makes sense to manage their team that way. They've hired somebody to be their driver long term who is a once in a generation talent. So it doesn't make sense for them. They create more problems for themselves if they hire another driver that they're even pretending to be close to the caliber, pretending that they could compete with Max. Whereas a team like Ferrari, they're not right at the front right now. They don't have to. It doesn't make sense for them to prioritize for a whole season, have a number 1, number 2 driver. Mid-race, does it make sense sometimes to pick, yes, we have to prioritize this person's result over the other? Absolutely. But for most teams, as like their big overarching plan, it does not make sense to pick a number 1 and a number 2 driver.
I agree.
Straight up. Even with somewhere like Mercedes, because you do want George to be gaining experience so that way when Lewis retires, he's good to go. But you still also want to make sure that Lewis is getting those opportunities to be the GOAT that he is. And they're fumbling the bag a bit on that balance, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, it's a balance. You have to pick your moments and when to prioritize each of your drivers.
Yeah. I agree. I want to know if this book was written by an F1 driver or like a sports psychiatrist.
I've seen it before kicking around. So
yeah.
it is, I think it is written by someone relatively credible.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not
If it's the
doubting
book
it.
I'm
I think
thinking
that's
of.
right. Yeah, I think that like that is a correct opinion because all these guys grow up wanting to be number one, and they got there because they were number one their whole lives. You know, like you get there because you are the best of the best. So it's really hard to be number one, be number one, be number one forever, and then get there and be like, for your career, you're gonna be number two. And it's like, I don't know how to be number two.
The gifted child crash on an extreme level.
Counterpoint.
Oh my gosh.
Someone pointed out counterpoint. Look how toxic the Nico Lewis relationship was.
Well,
That's
exactly.
I'm worried about that at McLaren. I'm worried about Lando and Oscar are so like close together that they could be in a similar situation. Same thing at Ferrari. Same thing at Merc.
I think at McLaren, if one of them cracked first, I think it would be Lando. But I think it would just be because he's been there for so long, and like I think if Oscar got a win before he did, I think he would be rightfully upset. Like I would be upset too if I was him. But I love Oscar, so I'm like, Oscar's just gonna be the Savage King that he is, and just drive his car very fast.
It's true. And at the end of the day, I do think currently McLaren will still prioritize Lando because he has all of those years of experience that do just mean he has a higher depth of knowledge. He knows better how to manage his tires. He just is at a higher level of experience that Oscar, it is a bit more of a risk to prioritize him during a race. He's exceptionally good. He's exceptionally gifted, and he's learning so quickly. But if I'm a team principal and I have to choose who to prioritize and they're pretty much equal on pace, I'm gonna pick Lando because,
I will say Lando's pace has been better this year than Oscar's pace. However, I think that they made the right call yesterday and being like,
absolutely,
don't fight, don't switch. Like,
absolutely, that was the right call.
That was the right call. Yeah. And Lando got the upgrades before Oscar did, so he's had more time to like work with them. So something to consider.
No question.
But I'm always
Oscar
going to
had
defend
a better
Oscar. I love
weekend.
Oscar, so,
Oscar was having the better weekend. That's the thing. But my bigger point is that I do still think overall they will prioritize Lando. But there will always be instances where the tide might shift. Adaptability. Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Jimbo22 says he loves you guys.
Thanks, Jimbo.
And someone's pointing out the McLaren could have beat Sebastian Vettel in 2010, but they kept picking points off each other. So him and Hamilton, I guess.
Yeah. You have to be smart about things.
Yes, you do.
Conscious choices.
Conspiracy theory, what if Lewis crashed in order to avoid the heat? I don't think
No.
he would have risked George's car like that.
No.
Lewis would be smarter that if he wanted to crash, he would have just dipped his tires a bit too much in the sand and sent himself spinning. Like, come on.
That's not how you send yourself out.
Come on.
No.
All right, we are at about 45 minutes now. Any final thoughts on the race weekend?
We can save them for the podcast. So, guys, go listen to the podcast.
In 2 days. On Wednesday.
In 2 days. Don't worry. The rage will still be alive in 2 days. In me. But no, if you said you liked my hat, you can get it at CMC Motorsports. Link in my bio.
CMC.
They come in great colors, and it's like a lighter mesh material. So it's coming with me to Coda because it's like white and really light. Sometimes they make it with like that cotton material, and it's
You're going to Coda?
Yes.
And you're going to Coda.
Yeah.
And I'm going.
We're all gonna be there. I thought you were like just finding out for the first time I was going. I was like, I don't feel like this is news.
So confused.
I was
confused too.
Your acting was so good you convinced me.
Yes.
Thank you guys for joining us for the live stream. Any last thoughts from you, Christina?
No, my headband's squeezing my head too much. I have no
Oh.
thoughts. Just vibes.
Amazing. It is cute.
Thank you. It's velvet.
Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
And yep, this will be live on as a podcast tomorrow, and then the next day the actual podcast. Yeah. All the
Amazing.
content you can.
Talk to you soon.
Rudy?
Later.
Bye.